Most single men are wasting the most powerful phase of their lives. No obligations, no children, no shared liabilities, no one else's schedule to coordinate with, no one else's financial priorities competing with yours, no one else's emotional needs determining how your evening ends. Complete unrestricted control over the most valuable resources you possess: your time, your money, your attention, your energy. And what do most men do with that? They scroll. They complain about their situation without changing it. They chase validation from people whose opinion of them will not matter in 5 years. They drift through days that look busy but produce nothing that compounds. They confuse motion with progress and entertainment with rest, and then wonder why the years pass without the trajectory changing. Here is what most men will not tell you directly. Being single is not a status. It is not something that happened to you or something you are waiting to escape from. It is a window, a specific, finite, genuinely rare window of maximum personal leverage that most men only get once. And if you don't use it intentionally, it closes, not dramatically, quietly, one drifted year at a time. The men who understand what this phase actually is, who treat it with the seriousness and the strategic intention it deserves, come out the other side of it as different people. Not slightly better, categorically different, physically transformed, financially positioned, psychologically grounded, ready for whatever comes next from a place of genuine strength rather than anxious need. Today, you are going to understand exactly what those men do differently, and more importantly, what you should be doing right now. Single is not loneliness. That framing is the first thing that needs to go. Single is leverage, structural leverage that exists in its purest form right now, in this phase, before the obligations that genuine partnership and family introduce. Distribute your resources across multiple people's needs and priorities. Right now, you control your time completely. Every hour of every day is yours to allocate based entirely on what your own priorities require. That is not a small thing. That is one of the rarest conditions a human being can occupy. Most adults spend most of their lives in environments where their time is substantially determined by other people's claims on it. Employers, partners, children, social obligations, the accumulated weight of commitments made over years that now govern how the days go. You control your money completely. Every dollar you earn, every financial decision you make reflects nothing but your own priorities. Your risk tolerance is entirely yours. Your savings rate is entirely yours. Your investment strategy is entirely yours. The financial decisions that will determine your position 10 years from now are being made right now. And right now you are the only person they affect. You control your location. You can move fast without coordinating with anyone to wherever the opportunity is, to wherever the cost of living makes your savings rate highest, to wherever the professional network or the physical environment or the tax jurisdiction serves your trajectory best. You control your routine, the daily structure that determines your physical condition, your cognitive performance, your emotional baseline, the compounding of every habit that produces a better version of you is entirely under your management. Leverage unused becomes weakness. That is the honest statement. Because the alternative to using this leverage intentionally is not neutral. It is drift. And drift, in a phase where compounding is most powerful, costs more than most men realize until they are on the other side of it looking back. The historical pattern is clear. Men who achieved significant things built before they bonded. They gained status first. They developed competence, reputation, resources, the specific combination of capability and demonstrated value that made their participation in any endeavor meaningful. Then they secured partnership, entering it from a position of genuine strength rather than emotional urgency. The modern inversion of this sequence, men seeking romantic validation before they have built any foundation worth validating, produces a predictable outcome. The relationship, however genuine the feeling that initiated it, is entered from a position of incompleteness. The man is still forming. His identity is still fluid. His financial foundation is still being laid. His sense of direction is still being discovered. And now those unfinished projects have to compete with the legitimate demands of maintaining a partnership. Here is the principle that makes the sequence matter. Commitment amplifies the man you already are. If you are weak when you commit, the commitment magnifies weakness. The insecurity that was manageable when it was only affecting you becomes destabilizing when another person's sense of security is tied to it. The financial fragility that was tolerable when it was your own problem becomes a source of chronic relational stress when it is a shared one. The identity confusion that was a private struggle becomes an ongoing negotiation about what the partnership should look like. If you are strong when you commit, the commitment multiplies strength. A man with genuine foundation, genuine financial stability, genuine identity clarity, genuine physical and emotional health brings those things to the partnership. They compound. The relationship is built on something real, and it produces something better than either person could build alone. Build the man first, the rest follows. Physical discipline is where most men should start, not because it is the most strategically important variable, though the case can be made that it is, but because it is the most immediate and the most honest. Your body is the platform everything else runs on. Your cognitive performance, your emotional regulation, your energy levels, your confidence, your risk tolerance, your ability to sustain effort under pressure, all of these are directly affected by the physical condition of the organism they are running on. Neglecting physical development while focusing on financial or professional building is not efficiency. It is a false economy that eventually produces diminishing returns in every other domain. Train even when no one sees. This is the standard. Not training to impress anyone. Not training when you feel motivated or when conditions are convenient. Training as a non-negotiable feature of the day, because you understand that the person you are building toward requires a physical foundation that does not get built without consistent, uninterrupted effort over time. The binary between comfort and compounding strength is real. Comfort says rest when the training feels difficult, says eat what you want because you deserve it, says miss the session because the day was long and you are tired. Comfort is not your enemy in small doses. As a governing principle for how physical decisions get made, it is the most reliable path to mediocrity. Compounding strength says, the session happens regardless, not because discipline is a virtue to perform, because the physical results you are building require consistency to compound, and consistency is the decision to train when you do not feel like it just as reliably as when you do. Your single years are the phase when this discipline is most purely available to build. No coordination required. No guilt about the time it takes away from shared life. Just you, the work, and the compounding that comes from not stopping. Income capacity is the second domain that demands serious attention during this phase, and the single years are when the aggressive development of it is most structurally available. Skill stacking is the most durable income strategy available to any individual. Not a single high-value skill in isolation, though that has value, but the combination of capabilities that becomes rare precisely because of the combination. communication ability layered with technical competence, financial literacy combined with sales skill, domain expertise paired with the ability to build an audience. These combinations are exponentially rarer than any single component, and they produce income leverage that a single skill rarely achieves. Digital leverage has changed the income landscape in ways that are still not fully understood by most people navigating it. The ability to build income streams that are not geographically bounded, that can scale without proportional increases in time invested, that compound through audience or asset accumulation over time, is available to any individual with the focus and the consistency to build them. Single men who can direct long, uninterrupted work sessions at building these capabilities during their highest leverage years create income trajectories that diverge dramatically from those who spread the same time across more distributed priorities. Single men can work longer without the guilt that shared domestic life introduces around the time work takes away from partnership. They can move faster without coordinating the movement with another person's career or comfort. They can take higher income risks, the year of below peak earnings, while building something with genuine upside, the geographic relocation that serves professional trajectory but disrupts shared life without those risks affecting anyone but themselves. Cash flow equals options. This is the operating principle. Every increase in reliable monthly income expands the range of decisions available to you. It increases what you can invest. It expands what risks you can absorb. It changes the confidence with which you negotiate in every professional context because your alternatives are better. Build it aggressively now, while the conditions for aggressive building are most fully available. Geographic flexibility is a weapon that single men consistently underuse. And in the current economy, it is one of the most concrete advantages available. Most men live where they grew up or where they found their first serious job. Those locations were not chosen based on an honest assessment of where they are most positioned to grow. They were chosen by circumstance or inertia. And inertia, in a mobile economy where the opportunity gradient across geographies is steep and growing steeper, is expensive. Consider what your current location is actually costing you, the cost of living relative to your income, the tax environment relative to where you could be, the professional network around you relative to where the most relevant people in your field are concentrated, the quality of the physical environment for training, for health, for the daily conditions that affect your baseline performance. Then consider what mobility would make available. Lower cost of living that dramatically increases your savings rate without reducing your income. Tax jurisdictions that materially change your effective financial position. Professional environments where proximity to the right people produces opportunities that remote access to the same people never would. International markets where your skills are valued at a premium relative to local alternatives. Speed equals advantage. The single man who can assess a new opportunity and relocate within weeks rather than months operates in a different category from the man navigating the same decision with a shared household's inertia to overcome. That speed, applied consistently to the highest opportunity positioning available to you, compounds into an enormous positional advantage over 5 and 10 years. Energy leaks are where most men bleed the resources that building requires without noticing it happening. Toxic friendships are the most expensive energy leak and the most consistently underestimated. The relationships that drain rather than build. The people whose company leaves you feeling less directed, less motivated, less clear about what you are doing and why. The social environments that pull toward the consumption and complaint and comfortable mediocrity that the building phase requires you to move away from. These relationships feel like loyalty obligations. They are actually opportunity costs. Cut them or limit them severely, without drama and without excessive justification. Endless dating cycles that produce nothing but emotional volatility and wasted evenings deserve the same honest assessment. If the romantic pursuit is not moving toward anything real, if it is producing the anxiety relief dopamine cycle that feels like aliveness, but is actually just distraction with a romantic label attached to it, the energy being spent on it is energy that is not building anything. Jacques' social media addiction deserves its own confrontation. The hours per day that go into passive consumption of other people's curated outputs, the comparison loops, the outrage cycles, the validation checking, these are not rest. They are not recovery. They are active depletion of the attentional resources that deep work requires. Every hour spent in the scroll is an hour that is not building the thing you claim you want to build. Reactive habits broadly. The default responses to boredom, stress, or difficulty that feel like relief but produce nothing. Energy is finite and it does not regenerate infinitely. Where you direct, it determines what gets built. Every energy leak you close is additional resource redirected to the things that compound. A male network is not a luxury during the building phase. It is a structural requirement. Men accelerate through brotherhood, not the casual acquaintance network of people you know from shared contexts. Genuine relationships with men who are building seriously, who hold standards for themselves that challenge you to hold higher standards for yourself, who will tell you the truth about your work and your decisions and your avoidance when you need to hear it rather than when it is comfortable. Mentorship specifically, the relationship with men who are further along the trajectory you are building toward, who have navigated the decisions you are approaching, who can compress years of trial and error into insights that change how you approach what is ahead. These relationships are built through genuine service, through demonstrating that you take your own development seriously enough to deserve the investment of someone who has already done the work. They do not come from asking for advice. They come from showing that advice given to you will not be wasted. Strategic alliances, the professional relationships that are mutually beneficial, the men whose capabilities complement yours, whose network overlaps with yours in ways that create opportunities for both, whose shared projects produce more than either could build alone. Proximity determines trajectory. The people you spend the most time around are the most powerful environmental variable affecting your development. Not your intentions, not your ambitions, the actual humans whose standards, habits, and expectations constitute your daily social environment. Build the network with that reality in mind and let it replace the relationships that are pulling in the wrong direction. The midpoint of this conversation is the mindset that makes everything else possible. Because all of the tactical actions we have been describing require a psychological foundation that a lot of men do not have yet and need to build during this phase. Seeking external validation is the most expensive psychological habit a man in the building phase can maintain. External validation creates emotional dependency. It makes your confidence track other people's responses to you rather than your own honest assessment of your effort and your trajectory. It produces fear-based decisions, choices made based on what will be approved of rather than what actually serves your development. The single phase is the time to detach from approval as the governing feedback mechanism for your decisions, not to become indifferent to all external feedback, but to develop the internal reference point that tells you whether you are doing the work, regardless of whether anyone is acknowledging it. The training that happens whether or not anyone sees it. The financial discipline that holds whether or not anyone is impressed. The work that gets done, whether or not it generates immediate recognition. Mission-driven versus approval-driven. These are not just different motivational styles. They produce fundamentally different trajectories. The approval-driven man adjusts his direction based on what is generating positive social response. The mission-driven man adjusts his direction based on honest assessment of what is actually producing results toward a defined goal. Over 10 years, these two compasses point to completely different places. Emotional control is the capability that separates the men who execute from the men who plan indefinitely. Impulse control, the ability to feel the pull of immediate gratification and not act on it when acting on it costs you something that matters more. The meal that undermines the training, the purchase that undermines the savings rate, the conversation that drains energy you need for the work, the reactive response to a difficult situation that costs you a relationship or a professional opportunity. Impulse control is not the suppression of desire. It is the prioritization of what you actually want over what you momentarily want. Delayed gratification, the willingness to accept present discomfort in exchange for future position. To live below your means now, so that your financial position later is qualitatively different. To train through difficulty now, so that your physical capacity later is what you want it to be. To do the unsexy foundational work now, so that the trajectory later reflects it. Every significant outcome is on the other side of extended delayed gratification. The men who internalize this principle and act on it consistently build different lives from the men who do not. Conflict neutrality, the ability to encounter friction, disagreement, difficulty, without it destabilizing your performance in other domains. The professional negotiation that gets heated without rattling you. The social interaction that goes sideways without affecting the training session that follows. The difficult period that does not collapse the financial discipline. Calm men dominate chaotic environments because their output is consistent, where other people's is variable. That consistency over time produces disproportionate results. Investment during the single phase is not optional for the man who is serious. It is one of the highest leverage activities available. Index investing, consistent and automatic, captures the long-term wealth-generating capacity of equity markets with minimal active management requirement. The compounding at this stage, when the investment horizon is longest and the lifestyle obligations are lowest, produces outcomes that identical contributions made a decade later simply cannot replicate. Every year of delay is not just 1 year's returns foregone. It is all the future compounding those returns would have produced. Business equity, the ownership stake in something you are building that has genuine upside beyond the income it generates. The most financially significant outcomes for individuals, almost universally, involve equity ownership rather than income alone. Your single years, when the risk of building something is most purely yours, to bear without affecting anyone else's stability, are the years when taking that risk makes most sense structurally. Skill equity, the capabilities you invest in now that produce higher income and better opportunities for decades. Every serious skill development during this phase is an investment with a return that extends for the entirety of your professional life. The compound return on skill investment is among the highest available and among the most consistently underestimated. Health equity, the physical foundation built, now pays dividends in energy, cognitive performance, and longevity that compound through every subsequent decade. Neglecting it during the years when it is easiest to build is a debt that eventually comes due with interest. Optionality is the word that underlies every advantage we have been discussing, and understanding it clearly changes how you think about every decision in this phase. When you are single and building seriously, you can walk away from bad employment situations that are costing you more than they are paying you in terms of trajectory, from cities that are not serving your development, regardless of the social inertia that keeps you there, from deals, investments, professional relationships that look good on the surface but do not actually serve your direction, from the early stages of romantic involvement that is not genuinely what you are looking for before you have invested so much that walking away becomes painful. Power belongs to the man who can leave, not because leaving is the goal, but because the genuine ability to leave, the real alternative, the foundation that does not require any specific situation to sustain it, changes every interaction. It changes how you negotiate, how you set terms, how you respond to pressure, how you hold standards. The man who needs this job, this city, this relationship, this deal, accepts terms that the man who genuinely does not need it would not consider. Your standards should rise quietly during this phase, not announced, not performed, just enforced, through the consistent application of honest assessment to every opportunity and every person who enters your life. The man who raises his standards quietly, who simply stops accepting what does not meet them without drama or explanation, develops a scarcity around his time and attention that is real rather than manufactured. Scarcity increases value. Desperation destroys leverage. Let your building produce the first and eliminate the second. There is something worth redefining in the way most men understand loneliness during this phase. Loneliness is not the absence of people. That is an important distinction. A man surrounded by people whose company does not nourish him is lonely. A man alone with genuine purpose, with work that matters, with a clear direction, and the daily discipline of moving toward it is not. Loneliness is the absence of direction. It is the emptiness that comes from a life without genuine purpose, without meaningful contribution, without the specific sense of forward motion that comes from building something real. That emptiness is not solved by the presence of other people. It is solved by the presence of genuine mission. Purpose replaces emptiness when you have real work that requires your full capability. When the morning has a direction and the evening has something to show for it. When the year is visibly different from the year before, it in ways that reflect genuine development rather than accumulated time. That quality of life is not lonely. It is full, and it is the foundation from which everything else, including eventual partnership, can be genuinely chosen rather than desperately sought. Let's be honest about what happens if you waste this window, because the contrast matters. If you drift through the single phase, if you consume endlessly without producing, if you chase casual validation instead of building genuine leverage, if you avoid the discomfort that real growth requires in favor of the comfortable numbness of a life organized around entertainment and complaint, the window closes, not dramatically. You do not receive a notification. The years accumulate. The financial position that aggressive early saving and investing would have built does not exist. The physical foundation that consistent training would have laid is not there. The skills that genuine investment during these years would have developed have not been developed. The network that deliberate building would have created has not been created. And then the obligations arrive anyway, not through choice, but through circumstance. The financial pressure that was always coming, now faced without the cushion that the building phase would have provided. The relationship, when it forms, entered from a position of less rather than more. The life that was supposed to start when conditions were better, which they never are unless you make them better, now beginning from a baseline that the drift created. Freedom decays into regret when it is not used. The opportunity cost of the single phase wasted is not just the absence of what building would have produced. It is the presence of what the absence of building eventually requires you to manage. And managing a life built on drift is substantially harder than building a life on foundation. Here is where we land. Single is not your identity. It is not something that defines you permanently or something you should organize your sense of self around. It is a phase, a window, a specific, finite, genuinely rare period of maximum personal leverage that is available to you right now and will not be available in the same form indefinitely. You can use it to complain about your situation while the situation stays the same. You can use it to scroll and consume and chase the low-cost validation that keeps you feeling like you are participating in something while your actual trajectory produces nothing. You can drift through it and tell yourself you will start building when conditions are better, and discover, as everyone who has told themselves that discovers, that conditions only get better when you make them better. Or you can use it to compound. The men who dominate the next decade are building right now, quietly, without announcement, without waiting for conditions to be perfect, or motivation to arrive, or the social pressure to subside. They are training when they do not feel like it, working when the work is difficult, investing when spending would be easier, building the network when isolation is more comfortable, developing the skills that feel slow before they feel powerful. They understand what this phase is, and they are not wasting it. Use your solitude. Sharpen your leverage. Build before you bind. Build first.